What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about Tarrant County and the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We get into politics, business, culture, news. If it impacts you as an 817er, we discuss it. We give you one big story, 3 short stories, wins, losses, and actions. My name is EJ Carrion.
And I'm Ann Zeta.
And this is Wesley Kirk. Today, we have Chanea Bond, who is the department English chair at Southwest High School, and Ale Checka, weirdly to say, former Fort Worth ISD.
Former Fort Worth ISD teacher, current, I just opened a tutoring business. Staying as teaching adjacent as I can, EJ.
Yes.
And so what is the name of the business that you're starting?
Encouraging learning.
Encouraging learning.
Encouraging learning.
Well, I'm encouraging teachers to run for office because I think if they're going to take, the state is going to take over your school,
right
you can take over city council. Just saying, you know. But let's dive into y'all's, like, I guess, Fort Worth experience. I know you've been on the pod now 3 times or 4.
I don't know.
You're now like up with Tara Maldonado. I think that's like the race of it's basically
frequency.
Our friends, I realize. You know, I hang out with
The people
Tara.
we like.
Yeah, I hang out with Tara and you
And I
hang
hang out
Ale.
with Ale.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but go ahead and just kind of give us context of who you are, your experience in Fort Worth ISD, your expertise, but then also your take on like where we are right now on the state of Fort Worth ISD.
Okay, I'm not 100% a townie, but I'm like townie adjacent. Mm-hmm. So I am, I grew up in Arlington, right next door, which is what makes me townie adjacent. My parents are from Mexico, and then I lived in New England for 10 years. I came to Fort Worth, and then I proceeded to like teach half the town. So that's kind of my Fort Worth thing is for almost 20 years, I taught in Fort Worth ISD, and I taught at a school where the kids came from all over town. So anywhere I go in Fort Worth, like
Miss Checka.
I taught them. And as I always tell the kids, like, if you do bad things in your life, you were Miss Barnes's students.
Yes.
But if any good thing that anybody that I ever taught does in their life, then I reserve the right to take full credit, like 100% until they all die. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
You do. And when you tell me about your students, you're like, this is my tiny little baby. And they have, they work at NASA or something.
Yes.
Like, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I do say it like that. And it'll be like a sports thing. And then the poor, my old students are 30, right? And they'll be like, Miss, you literally don't know how basketball works. I'm like, yeah, but I taught you everything you know. So.
Well, how long have you guys kind of worked together? Because you guys are at the same school now. Were at the same school. And it's also important to note for everyone, I should have led into this, that Chanea Zuby was
Yes, our assistant principal.
assistant principal in Southwest. Mm-hmm. She got promoted to Western Hills High School.
Yes.
When all this has happened.
Correct.
So we are also speaking with people who can connect with that as well.
Who work directly with Chanea. I have taught I just finished year 11. I was in a small town, North Texas, Wichita Falls, and I taught at the high school that I went to school in for 4 years. It was amazing. We moved here in 2019 because my husband had a job here, and we were like, we're going to go to the big city. It's going to be amazing. And then 2020 happened, and it was not amazing. And it was a small city. It was a small city of my house, even though we moved from a smaller town. And I've been teaching at Southwest in Fort Worth for 7 years. And I met Checka because I gave her water when there was a big freeze. And we re-met again in 2024 at the NCTE conference. And we were like this. And at our winter party for our department, I like invited her because I was trying to lure her over from middle school to high school. I was like, meet all these incredible people. Guys, this is Checka. Be sweet and kind so that she wants to come work with us. And then she did. And then she taught robotics.
Well, you lured her in to do the whole English
Yeah,
thing.
I did.
Although I can't say that she abandoned the English thing while she was with
there
you.
the whole time. She was there every day. But because she didn't take the job being like the lead English teacher, every time she came in and she was like, oh, I'm just drinking my coffee and I'm just hanging out, because those responsibilities went to me. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, she's been mad at me for
a year.
like a year.
Yeah.
I also want to say something, because when Chanea and I run around town, there's different kinds of credibility when you're a teacher, right? So there are some people that give teachers no credibility at all. It doesn't matter what degrees or accomplishments you say. The second you say teacher, they just shut down, right? But Chanea and I do have a bunch of credentials from a lot of different things and awards and whatever. But the credibility that we have with each other is the one that like, it's the hardest one, which is we share students in common over the course of years.
Yes.
So like the way that I knew about Mrs. Bond before I ever like met or interacted with Mrs. Bond is that my middle schoolers go to every high school in town and then come back and tell me bad stuff and great stuff, right? So like in teacher world, like the most powerful credibility you can have of like, oh wow, that person knows what they're doing is that. And so like I just remember telling Anne's like, what are you doing at Southwest? And I was like, it's like Michael Jordan of teaching said, why don't you come for a little bit? And like that's the caliber of people I want to be learning from. So that's how Bond and I know each other.
Wow.
She's okay.
Wow.
Solidly
I
male.
mean, to get that from
okay.
Ale Checka is a big deal.
I know.
big
Every
stamp.
time she says it, I get goosebumps because like she is the teacher that I love getting kids from. Every kid who's like, I had Miss Checka. Well, the first kid, it was like, do you know what today is? And I was like, no, I don't know what today is. And she's like, it's Edgar Allan Poe's birthday. And I was like, okay. And the kid was like, Miss Checka would not like you. And I was like, you mean Ale Checka? Because she does like me. Actually, she does like me. She owes me water now that we're talking about it. But all of those kids, I'm like, oh, you're a Checka kid because they're writing and they're reading at such a high level and they feel safe asking questions. And so like getting the opportunity to nurture that as they get older and oftentimes getting the credit, even though you lay the foundation is it's like an honor and it's really lovely.
She's saying that because there was a kid that I taught in middle school and she taught in high school who told me very, very sincerely at the beginning of last year, I had so like, what's Bond like? Like, what's she like in class? This kid said, well, finally somebody has taught me how to write. And I was like, finally, man.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
I mean, I was your English teacher, but like, finally. Anyway, that's like the all-time best thing the kids have ever said.
This sharing has been amazing. It's all very positive and uplifting about the teaching experience that you all have had. But the reason that you're here today is because there's some stuff going on in Fort Worth that isn't so positive. And you both have had a lot of experience and with the takeover that's going on, with going down to the state and speaking at the state level, with what's going on just overall across the entire state, but specifically in Fort Worth. So what would you like to share with us about those experiences?
The title of this is the best and worst case scenario for a state takeover for Fort Worth ISD. And so it's two outstanding teachers. What's kind of it looks like from your eye view?
I think that we're feeling the difference between what it's like when somebody had to run for office to become a school board trustee and when somebody got appointed. I think that Pete Guerin sold people a story that when you come in, you know, everybody's going to come out of their towns and villages and pull down the statue of Saddam Hussein and welcome you as the rescuer, right? And that there is this idea of like, gosh, all of these teachers in Fort Worth ISD are doing such a bad job. And if we just go in and tell them to do a good job, that will fix everything.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. And it's just people who are, I don't think that they're bad people. I think that they are ill-equipped for the moment and don't realize it, right? So like when you come in with a spirit of credulousness, right? That you're taking at face value things that really you should be questioning. And then you are immediately dismissive of anybody trying to tell you something otherwise. That is, I think, what we're saying. And I would say like a really good example of this is the way that Mr. Guerin keeps repeatedly asking everybody if literacy is a human right. And I will say, I have had the personal experience of like begging Mr. Guerin in person, in panels, over the course of a couple of years now, of like, there's nobody involved. This is something I've said in this podcast. Nobody ran for school board or became an English teacher or became a principal because they hate literacy. Like not a single person was like, gosh, I just hate kids and I don't want them to learn anything, right? That's not a thing. So being an outside person and saying like we should do a resolution to say literacy is good is like me saying, you know what, guys, racism is bad. I don't know if you guys knew this, but it's bad. Like, okay. How does that change anything substantively? So like when we say literacy is good, great. How about as a starting point, we just all agree that, right? But the reality of being in office and not just criticizing from the sides is that when somebody like Chanea or I are trying to draw to somebody's attention, hey, we have these concerns about the curriculum. We have these concerns about the coaching model that you are paying a lot of money for. We have these concerns about like why this school or that school just lost like 80% of its staff. We have these concerns about like outcomes for our students. And like, I'm going to say specifically, we have data that shows that like the policies, like the person who is currently in charge of curriculum and instruction did a bad job under one superintendent who was ousted, the second superintendent, and now is on a third superintendent, right? So for somebody like me to say that, it's not out of personal animus. It's not because I'm trying to be mean to you. They seem to be very, very concerned, the board of managers, that we're all being mean to them.
Yeah.
We're trying to tell you that like those policies are not well thought through. And you need to like, you need to do a better job of just taking a little beat and thinking like, you know, the man who is the superintendent has 10 months experience total in his life ever of being a superintendent. Like Chanea and I collectively have decades, and not just in the world, but here. And Fort Worth ISD is a wonderful, wonderful place. It's not a beginner place. Like, it's just not a beginner place. So it was a real fault on the part of the state to come in and take over and put in someone who is probably has many good personal qualities, but like has no experience, and we're the learning curve, right? So yeah, that's what is currently happening. And the best case scenario is that the board of managers could slow their roll just a little bit. And like, rather than being so public and prideful about like, hey, we doged everything and like made these cuts and decisions without thinking about it at all, maybe slow your roll just like 2 seconds. And like, before you go headfirst into cuts, policies, whatever, maybe think about them first, right? And if the public, meaning the parents, the teachers, the stuff, are telling you both by showing up and begging you at meetings and also telling you with their feet by quitting, maybe stop and think for a second, gosh, you know, if there are teachers and principals here that made it through COVID, made it through multiple roll up and down superintendents, made it through the CRT wars, the book bannings wars, whatever, maybe the problem is not that those people are not committed or mediocre, as the superintendent keeps calling us. Maybe there are other issues at play.
I agree with everything Ale said. I think that I do agree with everything you said just now. I do. I think that what I'm learning sitting in the listening sessions and watching the board meetings is how little the board knows. And I do agree with you that their intentions are good, but coming into a place and not looking at what's working, not looking at where energy has been put, and we're cultivating and nurturing things. I think that is it feels like a colonizer spirit is something that I've been thinking about lately. And that makes me super uncomfortable, because working at Southwest High School, we have been begging the district to check the curriculum. We have been begging them to give us resources to do the work that we need to do. And so much of what we've done over the last 5 years has been in spite of Fort Worth ISD. Correct. And so everything that the new superintendent and the board of managers are saying doesn't work, we know. right? We know, and we've known for a really long time, and we've been advocating to the point where I have had meetings with district people, and I've invited them down, and I've made PowerPoint presentations about the way that this curriculum doesn't work. Like, I have been saying this, and everything that we've done is in spite of them, you know, going from an F to a B in 5 years was in spite of, not because of the district. And so this board and this new superintendent coming in and not saying, hey, what are you doing? What's working? How did you do this? What are the things that you needed to do this faster? That has been a huge slap in the face. And then sitting through these listening sessions and finding out that they have no idea.
None.
What is actually happening on the day-to-day in schools has been mind-blowing.
I'm going to say 2 different anecdotes that I wouldn't say if I was still an employee. And one is the number of conversations and also in writing admissions from different people in Fort Worth ISD saying, yeah, we know the curriculum is bad. We're going to do it anyway. That's a lot. Like, that's a lot of, like, people privately saying, no, we acknowledge that this is, but, like, that's who the head, like, those are Mr. Chowdhury's policies. And so by golly, nobody has any choice, right? So, like, if you can privately admit that, like, you can see that these things are not serving students, and then you publicly with a microphone say, like, yes, this is super, we are going to impose this everywhere. That's a real problem for me. That's a real source of frustration. And the other one, this is an anecdote I am only saying because I don't work there. And I also want to make it super, super, super clear. This is not about the teachers or even that department. But, like, I'm just going to give you an example of the disconnect between this rhetoric of, like, we're here for children, unlike these evil teachers who were just lazy, right? The department that I moved to this year is CTE. It's Career and Technology Education. And they have standardized tests like everybody else has standardized tests. So there's this one teacher that I met this year. I didn't know her well, but I just became slowly aware of, like, oh my gosh, stuff that to me was very dysfunctional and I was unused to because I come from a tested subject would be things like my supplies didn't come. So I can't teach the lessons for the curriculum that I wasn't provided because, like, my supplies didn't come. So when you say takeover, what you're hoping for is that, like, operations will improve.
Yes.
Like somebody at the state level is going to come in like the cavalry and be like, man, okay, a quick audit is showing here that, like, there's all of these systems level dysfunctions, right? So, like, I, the teacher, in order to teach, like, I need the literal actual supplies to arrive. I need the lights to turn on. I need the machines to work, right? And, like, things will happen. Like, they bricked all of the desktop computers in my classroom, but then didn't have a way for me to store the computers elsewhere or to get to the software that was on the computers, which is why I had the lab in the first place, right? Like, all these sorts of things of, like, yeah, no, it would have been super helpful for somebody from the state to come in, do an audit, recognize that there's these dysfunctions in an operational sense and do them. So when I would say this at department meetings, there's this one teacher, her students compete at the state level. Like, her students compete at the state level. I share students in common with her. They are coming back with medals and awards and this and that and the other. But her test is on software. It is on Adobe software. So the kids have a year to learn Adobe software, and then their standardized test is on Adobe software. The district didn't give them access to Adobe. Mm-hmm. The school district did not give them access to the software that they needed. So the kids did poorly on that test. State comes in and says, like, well, the data shows you're an ineffective teacher. The data shows this is a bad school. The data shows, like, you are unwilling to, like, meet the needs of your students. The data shows that, like, we want to do things that are good for kids but are uncomfortable for adults. So we are going to fix this for you. And so one of the hot tips that they had is that they had that teacher and every single teacher in the whole school district change how they have their classroom chairs. Mm-hmm. So now you have to sit together in pairs. We're going to give you a sticker. Here's an A sticker and a B sticker. And, like, here's training on how to have an A student speak to a B student. And here's the thing. So, like, they created busy work for the teacher, right? Because the kids scored poorly on that test. But
clearly that is not the reason the kids scored poorly on that test.
Nobody in this scenario asked, like, hey, why did your students who are patently extremely successful, competing at a state level, not pass this test, so that the teacher could have said, yeah, the thing that I needed was access to the software, right? And they're like, no, we have this solution. We're going to tell you how to put the chairs. And that times classrooms all over the place. So if it's math, if it's this, if it's that, if it's whatever, evincing the least bit of curiosity about like, hey, person, rather than coming in and saying like, you're incompetent, you're bad, here's a value judgment about it. Maybe like, I don't know, look at any other data point. Like when we keep saying like, look at something other than tests, this is what we mean. Look at any other data point and be like, okay, well, this data says that you're effective. This data says that you're effective. This is a red flag. Did you need something? And the answer is yes, I needed the supplies. I needed the software, whatever. And instead, when I say this thing about chairs, I mean that is now what people's yearly evaluations are on.
Whether or not you're putting the chairs in the correct way.
Correct.
Arranging your classroom.
That, like when we say scripted and time, whatever, this is what we mean. So somebody coming in and saying, hey, your students did poorly in fractions, so we're not going to give you training on how to teach fractions, but we are going to like completely disrupt what you're doing.
We're going to mass print out no red zone pieces of paper.
That's
so that
the
students
sort of
don't
thing
sit at the back of a classroom.
Right. And when I say that the board of managers kind of takes things at face value, is like the way that story gets repeated at a board meeting or evidently to the board is the superintendent or like takeover officials be like, yeah, the teachers are just being so stubborn about like not wanting student discourse. That's what I mean. Right. But there's plenty of time to like right that ship. It just, what is required in this moment is for people to like ask some questions.
Be curious.
Right.
Yeah, you mentioned these listening sessions. A couple of these listening sessions have gone viral with some teachers, educators, or parents in some way talking. What have you heard from the inside from families and educators about how these are going?
I was at one, and it was emotional because something that the board of managers, the two that were at our listening sessions, made very clear is that they didn't know. They didn't know how deeply some of these wounds are being buried, and they didn't know there is this level of tension between this new administration and people in schools. And this isn't just teachers, it's principals.
Yes.
It's even executive directors who are right above the principals. There is this persistent and pervasive level of fear that we have been living under. And I said that. I was very upfront, and so many teachers are afraid to say that. But we have walked into our principal's office, our former principal's office, and been told, I am afraid I'm going to lose my job on multiple occasions. We have had entire meetings where people are saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to lose my job. If you don't do this, I am going to ask you to do this nonsensical thing. And if you don't do it, I might lose my job.
Like the fact that kids are in the mix is so lost when you have, like when we say threats, there's one principal in town, he has been threatened that he's going to get written up if he wears sneakers again. Now you tell me how that has having effect on kids reading or not. Like, it's not normal for principals to come out of principals meeting crying.
Right.
You know, like that's just not a normal thing, and it's not a necessary thing. So like, how is, like, if the principals are in an atmosphere where they're being told you drinking a water bottle in a meeting is unprofessional, then like, how is that an atmosphere where a principal can push back on something that actually has stakes?
And it's not about student outcomes.
It's
because
not.
If it was,
it's nothing
then
about this.
The
is about
principals who have made the most growth wouldn't have left because
Then what is it about?
I would say that like when the superintendent at the meeting about INA, his big praise on students is that they're obedient and compliant. I mean, I think that's it. Of like, most of these things are like psychological thing on like imposing power, right? So like, if I make you so fearful that if you wear the wrong shoes or you're drinking water in the wrong meeting, then I have made it so clear that like, if those are stakes that are big enough for you to lose your job, then you pushing back on curriculum is that's a non-starter.
Obedience and compliance.
It's obedience and
To who though?
compliance.
Who are we being obedient and compliant to?
I would say like the person who seems to be the source of a lot of these policies is Chowdhury. So like when I told the state legislature, hey, at board meetings.
And can you give Chowdhury just more time of who he is, title?
Sure. That's the head of academics, right? And like we have data, huge amounts of data that like putting aside, and I also want to make clear, there's no personal animus here because I've never met him. I only know his policies. But like, if all of this is supposedly so data driven, right? Then like we have a lot of data over several years to show that his policies are disastrous, right? But we also have legal rights to like push back or to say a public comment and for him to be.
Why does he get to keep his job? Well, what do you think it is?
That's the question, EJ. That is how can you get fired for having a water bottle? How can you get fired because you didn't have your students in A and B? But if you tank numbers across multiple campuses, whatever, not only how do you not get fired, but like how is the Fort Worth report printing basically your press releases?
No, I totally believe Jacob Sanchez at the Fort Worth Report needs to step it up exponentially.
I don't think it has anything to do with Jacob Sanchez. I think it has
He's
to
too
do with the
nice.
fact, I don't think that that's the case. I think that they are funded by Mr. Guerin.
Exactly.
I think that that's
and
the
I
thing.
literally see Daddy Guerin look him in the eye and, he can tell he ain't going to move.
But I think it's also like a lack of accountability,
Yes.
right? And I think that the board of managers made it very clear that there are no guardrails right
None.
now. Licata has been given free reign to kind of do what he wants to do because they were all appointed at the same time. And so when you're appointed at the same time and you don't go into schools and you don't ask questions of the stakeholders, then you just kind of let the guy do what he does because like he was brought in by, Mike Morath, who I think is really, really in charge, right? To do the work that they're doing. But the lack of accountability between the board of managers and the superintendent as it stands today is, I think, where everything is breaking down. Because if you are a superintendent and I am in charge of deciding whether or not you're effective, and I have laid out guardrails, the idea that Fort Worth ISD, and this is from the Star Telegram, may be starting the year at 40 to 60% full for educators, that would be a red flag. If I am your
problem.
If I am your boss and you are telling me 40 to 60%, that's what we are predicting, and it might be significantly lower than that, but that's what from Licata's mouth they're predicting. That would be a red flag.
It seems from the outside looking in, Licata's real focus is managing the marketing and branding. I feel like the videos that are starting to play and the marketing and promotions and the way he highlights these principles that he's bringing in, he's definitely has a car salesman style about him. Does that feel like a good lane of what substance is happening internal that we can't see?
What I'm hoping is happening with that is that there's a change in strategy and a change in marketing, because when, teachers have heard you say they are mediocre, and when teachers, and not all teachers, right? Because if you look at my department, half of us have TEA designations. When those teachers are like, maybe I'm going to get out of here, I think you do have to change the branding. I think you do have to change the marketing. So yeah, I think that I'm hoping that this suggests that there is a different way that they're going to approach things, because there are no teachers and principals waiting in the wings. And I think that that's what we're learning very quickly. A lot of the principals in Fort Worth ISD are brand new, not just to Fort Worth ISD, but brand new to principaling. We're pulling some APs from El Paso to be principals. And I love that. I think that's an excellent opportunity. But what are you doing to make sure that they stay here and they want to grow here?
I feel like my competence has been weaponized against me so many different times, because when, we try to talk about teaching, teachers, autonomy, so on and so forth, I often get this, if all of the teachers were like you, right? But I want to make the point that I am alternatively certified. I didn't study education. The way that I am
Same.
now is because Fort Worth ISD grew me, right? I did not know about teaching. I worked in this school district, and this school district is the one that raised me up as a teacher. This is where I got my mentorship. This is where I was encouraged. This is where I learned my pedagogy and stuff. Like, the fact that I went to grad school twice and then came back to the same campus is because I felt like my work was valued. I felt like teaching was valued. I felt like my work with students was valued. And when I was doing things that were ineffective with students, I got called back in. And you can imagine that, like, if you're a young teacher in a department run by Chanea or run by me, it's not that our style is to be super laid back and like, yeah, let the kids watch a movie, right? So, like, if we could marry, again, student outcomes rather than compliance, right? You can absolutely say, hey, we need to do better by our students in this city, right?
And we agree. We all agree.
We all agree on that. And I think that there are schools in Fort Worth ISD that will be better this fall because of the takeover. If we can say, hey, the outcome here is non-negotiable, but you on this campus, we're going to remove obstacles from you so that you can meet the needs of the moment. That's a thing that will retain and attract principals and leaders that can do the thing. But the thing that is current is for them to say, we are going to publicly humiliate you in front of your students, in front of your colleagues. Like, the operating factor here is going to be shame and guilt. And the reward for having good outcomes with your students is nothing other than, like, look what happened to Al Zuby. So our campus was an F and now it is a B. And if it was about student outcomes, this would be a moment of like, yeah, amazing that you did that. Keep doing that. Like, keep doing that.
And figure out a way to replicate it other places.
And instead,
and how can we help you with these domains that you need help
with? My word, how can we help you would go a huge, 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 huge way. And instead, it is like, I mean, one of the things I found astonishing when I talked to the state legislatures, I saw them talk to Mike Morath. And man, I wish any of us were spoken to like how they speak to him. Because if you are a young teacher, I have seen people get in trouble for things like you had the lights off in your room while you were grading and there were no children. And people make it sound like it's such a thing. But the commissioner of schools in the state of Texas gets this treatment. Sir, Mr. Morath, your eyes look so pretty and your outfit is so nice. And we have this graph here that is tanking like a ski jump. And we don't want to make you feel bad. We certainly don't want to assign blame or imply that in any way. And also, may I say again, your breath from here smells like roses. But like, could you tell us a little bit how that is? Right? And I'm thinking, my word, if my colleagues and I were spoken to and treated like this, right? And instead we're getting like, hey, society has like not fed the kids, housed the kids, stuff, whatever.
And you're not picking up the slack.
Stuff, whatever. Like, why are you such a child-hating monster? Why are you so mediocre? And like, and my favorite from Licata, who has been here he's been here since March, was to say with the microphone, yeah, but the teachers we want are committed. Okay.
So, Ale, you mentioned kind of what grew you up as a teacher here in Fort Worth and the support that you had that made you into the incredible teacher that you are. And I think we saw it coming by looking at what happened in Houston, that a lot of teachers left when those policies were put in place. So what is it that you think that's happening now in Fort Worth that is driving away some of the best educators that we have had? And what policies are they putting in place that are going to make it worse? And I would like to end on a better note of what can we do to stem that tide and support teachers to stay with the district and have a better outcome?
Hold on. I know Wesley wants us to talk about policies, but I just feel like I have something to say. If you look at Houston today from a political perspective, Houston is about to turn red because it all started with an educational takeover. The way you stop the political shifts of power is by taking over schools. The data actually shows them this is how we keep our state red. So, but like those are things we're not talking about today because I know we're talking about this. But so it's like to me, I appreciate your reformist thoughts and questions
Because
that
you
you're
were gonna take
bringing.
a big picture.
But it's like what we're not really fucking talking about. That this is like
This is an authoritarian
yeah,
regime.
yeah, that
and
is controlling.
This is a
the
mechanism
function
of
of things.
authoritarianism.
I'm going to push back against what you're saying a little bit.
Yeah,
Because you have two things that are simultaneously true.
yeah,
What is happening in Fort Worth is not unique to Fort Worth,
yeah,
right? Like we have serious state level organized and deliberate undermining of public education in the state of Texas, right? Like the governor's race right now, it is not against two governors. It is against the commissioner of schools, right? And like if we don't have a different governor who puts a different one, it is game over for schools in the state of Texas. The closures, the layouts, the stuff, whatever, like that is statewide. And the takeovers are going to happen everywhere by design because those are the laws that they put in place for accountability measures, right? Like that is a deliberate thing across the state of Texas.
When was that law created?
The accountability measures and the funding and stuff, those are the last two legislative sessions where here I was in this podcast begging people, if you guys will remember, right? Like the changes that are happening at the State Board of Education, the changes that are happening with funding, the changes in like the stuff, like that is a long game being played, right? Concurrent to that, right? And also like these policies that we're saying, they are not local to Fort Worth ISD. Like this is a packaged, deliberate management system that we paid for that is coming from other school districts that have had disastrous outcomes with it.
Charter school districts to be
Correct.
specific.
Right. So like that is a true thing that is like a big Texas existential thing, right? So like you're not going to fix Fort Worth and then ignore the same state of Texas. Concurrently to that, if you are a Black parent living in many areas of Fort Worth ISD was doing a bad job and not meeting the needs of your kids, right? So you can't get so politicized that you are unable to say like, yeah, the takeover is not helping us stuff, and also we were doing such a great job. We weren't.
Yeah.
Right? Like we weren't.
Right.
But I don't think that's what I'm saying. It's been under.
Right.
I mean, it's been like this same power for the last over 30 years. So it's. I'm not saying that. I guess it's at the end of the day, the goal of the person is to poison you. We're talking about how what kind of
How to avoid the
grain
poison.
and what do we want it to be vegan or not?
I think
And I think that's like the fear.
No, I think that there's something to be said about like an authoritarian regime coming in, but there's also, like Ale is saying, this fear from marginalized people who have not been heard in either liberal or more conservative camps. As a Black parent, looking at the governor's race, looking at the Senate race, looking at some of the races that are significantly closer to home, I don't feel represented at all. And so
100%.
when you had this charter school rhetoric that was floating around before the last legislative session, it had a big appeal to Black parents because our kids are not being serviced well in schools.
Yeah.
And there
was
is
the marketing for
yeah,
it.
like we want, and we know, like as an educational scholar, I know that there's no way that Black kids are going to get more money to go to better schools. Like I know that that was never the point. But if you've got Gina Hinojosa, who's like, we're going to get rid of Mike Morath, but we're not touching on how we're still going to hold schools accountable and hold teachers accountable and hold districts accountable. That's where that disconnect comes from. So there is no level of preservation for the people who have been hurting in these systems that are set up for a really long time.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that conservative movements have latched onto, right? We can convince them that they're being done a disservice because they are, and weaponize that. But it's also important to, like, that's real. Those concerns and those fears are real. Black students have, throughout the country, but specifically in Texas, lagged behind even bilingual speakers or people who are migrating to Texas. Like, how is that the case?
I appreciate that because it's like what we're right. So Pete Guerin and the Sid Richardson Foundation has funded, charter schools.
Right.
And I believe when you look at the metrics of power, is that dense cities that can communicate with each other creates power in states. So what do? You take over the biggest school districts. You make the smartest people move to the burbs. You then, liquidate that structure of power. So no new politicians show up, no new strong school board members show up because now they have moved to the burbs. You look at what's happening in Dallas today, where businesses are moving to Frisco campus. It's like the way I keep the power is by ruining dense cities, which
I'm gonna push back again.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're talking here and there's here and there's here, right?
Correct.
Like I think that it is entirely a true thing that like at the state level you have this. And it is also a true thing that like I don't think anybody who is on the state appointed board of managers, and I don't think anybody who just got ousted who was elected is one of these people. I think that they are people who see like, yeah, the kids in this neighborhood, in this neighborhood, in this neighborhood were not being served. And they do have good intentions. And I guess like the disconnect.
But to get there, you have to have, it's what we're talking about there is abolitionist work, transformational change that would need to happen to make for people to care about black people in Texas.
Yeah, but I think like on this specific level, right? Like on like.
You're not going to reform our way to this problem that was just shared.
I think that in this, like the reason I'm sitting in this chair right now, this second, right, is not because I think that I'm going to like fix at this level. But I think that in the specific city where I live, in the specific school district that I'm sitting in, I think that there is a chance that you can get people to understand that like people who are pushing back against you at these listening sessions, it is not because they disagree with you in what the goal is.
They just don't know.
They are trying to tell you that the methods that are being used are incorrect and imperfect methods. And that is, I don't think, such a huge leap for people to get to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that you have to have like so many people agreeing on like the existential thing on like education in Texas and like this stuff in order to say like, hey, in Fort Worth ISD, a scripted timed curriculum is inappropriate for the students and the teachers.
But you're saying under a state takeover, you believe we can change that narrative. We can go from unscripted curriculum.
I think that you guys are saying similar things. I think that you're talking about praxis on a local level, which I think goes into abolitionist politics, right? If we, I mean, I think it's hopeful, and I don't necessarily know that it'll work, but I do think that getting to folks' humanity and reminding them that we are people who care about kids,
Yes.
and we are 100%. Not demonic, and we're not. I know that Gina Hinojosa kept saying culture wars. We're not culture war stirrers. I mean, we are kind of, but like not in our jobs, not in our work, right? We just want kids to read and write. And I think that's something that's really important is that after this takeover, the board of managers has to live with us. Right? They're not going anywhere. They've built their lives in Fort Worth. They are, even if they're not accountable to us right now, or they don't feel accountable to us right now, we're still your neighbors. We're still people who are going to patronize your businesses. And so reminding them of the community aspect of it. Like, you were chosen for some reason that we're never going to have access to. But now what? And I think that these listening sessions hopefully are a start to that. But I also think that we have to consistently, the idea of consistently reminding people on the left, on the right, especially as a black woman, as a black mom, like I'm a person, that's exhausting. That's exhausting.
And with
Yeah.
are the listening sessions mandated like steps, or was this a real creative?
It's part of the good governance, right?
Yeah, I think
So
they
they're
have
just
to have
like,
listening sessions.
okay, so it's not out of empathy, it's out of I have to do it.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely, it's legislated.
So then it's like, okay, I think it's like this belief, like what I'm trying to figure out is how do we believe that they check a box at this, they check a box at this, they're actually going to change this. If it just doesn't feel like playing in the inches is going to actually change anything. And so that's where I just, I know Wesley, he's already has his head on his knees, and he's like, "This one took a left
headphones
turn."
off like multiple
he's
times.
like, he's like, I'm
what are we
quitting.
doing?
But it's like, okay, Wesley wants policies. You believe talking about the inches is how we're going to change it. Let's do it. All right, what is it?
I don't think that I have to choose. I think that like I can both be someone who's like
person.
Yeah. I think.
What are we demanding for? You know, we can get people fired up. So
Look,
where are we taking them? What are we doing?
Look, I'm talking about piping up. I'm talking about piping up. Like, I think every parent in town, right? You don't have to be a parent who has like a deep expert knowledge of curriculum. You don't have to be a parent who has like a deep stuff, whatever. I think that like if you as a parent ever were gonna say anything now before the school year starts is the time to write an email, show up to the listening session to this stuff, and then say in writing, this is what I want for my child. This is what I do not want for my child. Now is the time, right? I think that like a year from now, you know, my kid's experience was miserable. All the teachers left, all this whatever is this stuff.
Too late.
Right. So I say like, yeah, every community member, this stuff. I think that if you're a teacher, I would say something different. I would say, you know how I talked to the state legislature? I got in my car, I drove 3 hours, I went to the state capitol, there's an iPad outside the door, and I signed up for it, and then I sat there for 8 hours. Like that is like, me personally, I say every teacher in town, if you want people to listen to us, we have all as teachers we have to stop waiting for people to ask our opinions and ask our expertise. We need to be our own spokespeople and like get a handful of your teacher friends, write an op-ed. They write op-eds, we can write op-eds. Get a handful of your teacher friends, get in the car, go to Austin. All you need is a phone and a calendar and say to your state rep, you know, and this is a stuff.
Do you think
whatever.
that's empowering or do you think that's effective?
Well, I think it depends on the outcome of it because you did that. And it was very apparent that committee had no idea what was going on in Fort Worth, Texas. They didn't even know that the takeover had just happened in the spring. They thought it was a year ago. And they were asking all kinds of questions. And the Gina Hinojosa brought up that this committee needs to know what the hell is going on. So there needs to be follow-up, apparently, not just going and speaking. You have to follow up and make sure that they're following through and doing the things that clearly come to light when a video goes viral of a teacher saying, we've been asking for help all this time. We need you to do something, not just listen.
That was so good. I was touched.
No, I think we're at the point where it's like a complete teacher walkout at the beginning of the school year. And nobody's going to fucking school. You're telling the family, the kids, fuck this shit. That over going to the state and talking to a bunch of people who don't give a rat's.
No.
I'm just saying. Those are just difference of thought.
Okay, so what does that look like in a state where we don't have collective bargaining rights?
That was your license to teach in the state of Texas,
Right.
CJ.
Right there.
But then sometimes I'm like, are they going to fire all of
Yeah,
us?
exactly.
That's kind of, I get that space too.
You know who's more powerful in New York than New York? New York City. New York City is more powerful than the state of New York. You know what Texas doesn't want? Us cities to actually realize we have power.
And going back to something that you said earlier, I just have to think like what students are then left to fend for themselves? I think about that when I think about revolutionary politics, right? Who gets burned first?
Yeah, I think about that when we talk about COVID too, because all those rich white parents went and
They
got
were like, "Oh yeah,
hired
we're just gonna
teachers
co-op.
to
We're
do a little co-op.
I'm gonna pay you money to." It's just like what the students that are already struggling then become collateral damage to our radical revolutionary politics. I don't think that you're wrong, but then I think about some of the kids that I see on a daily basis, and I'm like, "Oh, these guys are gonna be fine. They were always gonna be fine. These kids are the ones that like I worry about in the system that we have set up. And if this system dissipates overnight because we're trying to build a better system, they're not coming out of it.
Like the thing that keeps me up at night is what I just did.
That's one of the questions of the listening sessions. What are the things
What
that keep
keeps
you
you up at night?
Okay, well then here's the thing that keeps me up at night is that I just quit, and
I did not quit.
You didn't. Yeah, you did not quit. But the thing that stops teachers from saying stuff out loud when we say this stuff is it's not. I mean, yes, people need a job, people need a paycheck, whatever. But the kids that you leave vulnerable, is that's the sense of responsibility is so great.
It's giant.
It's stuff. And, you know, when the teacher is coming from a marginalized community, right? And you're in like, I know LGBT teachers that will not go to public comment at board meetings, whatever, because like, not only do you put the eye of Sauron on yourself, but also like, well, now your LGBT students no longer have like an advocate in the classroom, right? If you're, I mean, I'm like
I think it could also be, I think it also can be inspiring though. I think it can also be inspiring
And
to the
is.
kids with no
It
hope.
absolutely
Like
is.
I think seeing my teacher who's being oppressed for having water bottles and sneakers on, actually
Sure.
standing up,
Sure,
can
but
also inspire.
but
and I'm
AJ,
not saying,
I get those emails from kids. Like I get emails from
I get
kids
that.
saying, Miss Checka, I saw you standing up and it is stuff, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that means a lot to me and it means a lot to kids and that's great. But like, did that moment mean more or have more an impact on them of me not being their teacher next year?
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's something I live with. But like, yeah, no, it makes kids that I have taught feel like there's a Latina up there, you know, Miss Checka is giving it to them, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's inspiring. And now I'm not their teacher.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to navigate.
Yeah.
And like, that's what you are in the classroom trying to balance all the time. Like the more public that you voice things, the less protection kids have of you being in the classroom.
But that's also weaponized. That's
Correct.
been weaponized
That's the
against
pro- like,
Yeah.
we're
That's
supposed to live in
something
America. We're supposed to live in democracy.
I
Like-
had a pride flag up and it was consistent. Like, you should take that down. You should take that down. You should take that down. What happens if you're not here? What are we going to do? And I ended up taking it down because someone came up to me and they were like, is it more important that you have this display or is it more important that you're here doing the work? And it's like, it would be cool if I could do both, right? It would be cool if it wasn't a choice that I had to make specifically as like a queer Black teacher in Texas.
Yeah.
Like, it would be awesome if I didn't have to choose whether or not the symbol or the work, because they go hand in hand, right? If I have queer students, I have Black students, I have Latina students, all of these people use, like, my space is a hub. And this year it became significantly less safe because of the policies coming out of the district about us not being personal and us not having political things on our walls. And what I don't think that people understand is that there is a sacrifice there too, and we're walking that
very
line
hard.
all the time.
Very
I'm
hard.
walking that line all the time, and I thought 2 years ago when people were like, book bans, this is what we're gonna do. I was like, forget that. I'm gonna teach the book anyway. I'm gonna do what I want to. And when the moment happened in front of my face, the only thing I saw was my two kids, my two Black children, and then my department that's made up of queer folks and people of color. And it's like, these are early career teachers. And what am I doing to protect them? Can they afford to be on Fox News and to be harassed like it's what's happening with Shema Al-Zubi? So it is hard playing the political chess game of the personal and the local and the public and the political, especially when you're in a vulnerable position, because it's these moving pieces all the time.
Quitting, I think, is maybe the hardest decision of my entire adult life, because teaching is what I am, teaching is what I do, teaching is who I am. Like it is all the things. And I hit a point in which I can't do my job. I can't do my job. But the number in the last year, the number of crying phone calls that I have received from young teachers, the number of emails that I get of students who are in high school, whatever, and they're miserable right now,
Right.
is like that's the thing, is like you're the public face of like, look, I'm trying to make things better in a global sense, but there's human children who are in school now. Like there are teachers who have the potential to be like outstanding teachers, and we're gonna lose them if we don't do stuff now. And like that's the balance. But like, yeah, no, that is like truly the hardest decision of my adult life, and like the amount of moral decisions that Texas public school teachers are being made to do every single day, where you have state policies in place that harm your kids, right? And like, you have to make a decision of like, well, where's my line in the sand? Where's my line in the sand? And my personal one has been, I will participate in a policy that is not personal. I cannot participate in a policy that is personal, right? So like, if the 10 commandments are up, I don't think that any kid ascribes that to me as an individual, because it's a thing that has stuff. But do you know how hard it is to be an LGBT teen in Texas? Like, I cannot participate in a policy that is going to be me being the face of a kid being traumatized at school. Do you know what I mean? And so like, it's a lot. It's a lot. And then for on top of it, the state to come in and be like, you can't even choose how your chairs are going to go. I think that's the context.
But that's what I'm saying is, I hear the desperation. You've been on this pod multiple times.
Yeah.
Having the desperation. I'm not saying. And now we're at the point where you're moving on from being a teacher right now. And I don't feel like success in Fort Worth ISD isn't until Ale Checka is back as a teacher, because it's back alive in emotion when it inspired you to go get 2 graduate degrees and do what you do. That's what we got to get back to.
At Harvard.
And that, and Harvard, by the way.
Yeah.
So I think for as long as I've known you, Ale, I'll make this a little bit personal. You leaving Fort Worth ISD was a scenario that I had hoped to never see. And I know that there has just been policies and things that have happened that have made this have to be the case. But are there things that we can advocate for, policies that we need to be calling out that would bring back the quality teachers like yourself and the quality administrators that are leaving the district in this moment, to make them come back?
If you want the principals to come back and the executive directors and like the leadership, you have got, like, the district has a chowdery problem, right? Because that isn't even curriculum, that isn't even whatever, that is an HR, like, toxic workplace sort of scenario. So that's one. Is I don't know, like, a elegant way of saying it, but you have to stop being mean to people as a policy if you want people to work for you. That's a big one of, like, shame and fear have that cannot be an HR policy.
And it's not urgency. It's just shame and fear.
It is just shame and fear, right? You cannot have HR decisions being done by internet randos. That's a big one. When I say you have to value teachers in teaching, you got to value teachers in teaching, and you have to have some trust. Like, if you're hiring new leadership, let them lead, right? And have some common sense about, okay, if we have some campuses or teachers or leaders that are ineffective, do we have tools that we can use to help them become effective that maybe are not appropriate in places where they are having successes or being effective, right? You can't, some of it has to be carrot. It can't all be stick. And I can't believe I have to say this out loud, but like, the superintendent of schools has to stop calling everybody mediocre.
And I think, yes, I agree. I also think that there's something, and I'm speaking from the teacher side, about developing and growing educators into people who can do this job. If you are only teaching a scripted curriculum, there's no level of responsiveness. I never get to figure out who my students are. I never get to figure out what they need. I never get to figure out how they see the world. And I definitely understand that there are a lot of teachers who do not have the skills to do that in a way that still upholds the level of rigor. Educators love rigor. But I think that there are people who have been doing that work for a very long time and haven't compromised. And so finding the people who have been working through these hard things while not sacrificing our most vulnerable students and uplifting them and encouraging them and empowering them instead of making them feel like they're constantly in trouble, I think that that's the work. I do not think a scripted curriculum is inherently bad. I will say that. I know that a lot of teachers are going to hate that. But I think that I've seen a lot of excellent teachers flame out because they've been trying to build curriculum while also figuring out classroom management while also trying to get their bearings. And I think that that's extremely unfair. But I think that allowing some space for teachers to do their jobs and do the work that they're probably in debt for is the sweet spot. And I think that there have been leaders in Fort Worth ISD who were doing that, and now they're gone.
I mean, that goes to a point exactly that we personally had with 2 brand new teachers that came to Fort Worth ISD and ended up leaving within the first year that they were there. And Ale and I met with them in the very beginning and talked about the type of support that new teachers need, and that administrative, just constant administrative stuff coming down made it so that at least one of those teachers was like, I can't do this job with the kids because of what is demanded of me.
One of the most sad things to me is like when you have these systems in place, it makes experienced teachers realize like, oh, this is not a place where I can serve my students. I'm going to work in a school where I can serve my students, right? Because like when you keep setting everything up as like who's for the children and who's not for the children, people seem to forget that like children are in all schools, right? So like if you don't let me teach the children in this school, I can teach children in other schools, right? It's not that I'm not going to get to teach children, but an inexperienced teacher may think, oh, that's just what teaching is, is that it is this completely miserable experience where like you are in there because you like kids and you want to encourage them and help them and develop them. And instead you're like the warden, and they don't leave the district, they leave the profession. Right. And like we have a lot of that going on in Fort Worth. And for the superintendent to like ask teachers, as he did on one campus, like, aren't you so glad that I got you this raise? And the teacher that he was speaking with was like, I mean, you just fired all my friends and like laid off these positions. I think that gets to, hey, people who are in classrooms, like we like kids and we should be compensated fairly, but your policy cannot be to like shame and demean people and then give them a raise.
And then put crazier expectations because you get that raise. You don't want like what comes with the raise is even nastier expectations.
Right. Like the expectations need to be lined up with what's good for kids.
And also need to be supported.
Yeah.
Not like you can't throw out, oh my gosh, I'm going to expect you to do all these strategies, but I'm not going to give you a curriculum that's usable or aligned in any way. Like that's super unfair.
Well, I know you guys have dealt with unfair positions throughout your tenure here at Fort Worth ISD. One of my favorite things to do about this podcast, and every time we've done a podcast, is highlighting brilliant teachers in Fort Worth ISD. And so I think the fact that you guys have had the courage you've had, Ale, you've been inspiring throughout all of this, and I know you have done great work. And just thank you for coming on the podcast again to have these conversations. For those who have ever listening, I know we have teachers who listen. I know we have parents who listen. I know we have leaders who make decisions that are listening. I think this is the conversation we need to be having on what is right, what is enough we can give to the collective of change, but then also protect humanity. So thank you all for doing that for kids and for all of us.